He did everything right and still lost everything. The reason why will leave you speechless. I need to stop here before I even begin, because this one is not easy to sit with. Imagine doing everything right. Imagine being the dad who shows up, the husband who stays present, the man who never checks out. And then one day, you wake up and none of it matters. Your wife met someone with a bigger paycheck and a shinier title, and just like that, the family you built from the ground up is gone. Half your time with your own child, gone. The life you knew, gone. And the worst part is you are still standing there, completely sober, going to the gym, taking your meds, doing all the things people tell you to do, and it still feels like the world ended. That is where this story starts. And it does not get easier from here. Our narrator, and yes, I am going to call him that because this man deserves to be centered in his own story, has been through something that would crack most people in half. His wife got a great job. That is a beautiful thing under normal circumstances. But with that job came access to a world of high-achieving men, and apparently the attention of those men hit different than anything her husband could offer. Now he is clear that he was not a low-effort partner. He was super involved. He was present as a father, the kind of dad who remembered the school events and showed up for the small ordinary moments that do not make it into any highlight reel. He was present as a husband, the kind who stayed in the room during hard conversations instead of shutting down or walking out. But he was never the high earner in the relationship, and somewhere along the way that became the metric by which he was measured and found lacking. Not by anyone objective. Not by any standard that actually reflects what a good partner looks like. But by the new world she had stepped into, a world where status was currency and he simply did not have enough of it. She fell for one of those men. Hard and fast, the way people fall when they have already been quietly checking out for a while, when they have already been comparing and measuring and finding reasons to look elsewhere. There is a particular kind of betrayal in that, the slow interior departure that the other person never sees coming. Our narrator was still in the marriage, still investing, still believing in the life they had built, while she was already somewhere else in her mind. And in the aftermath of that, he lost two things at once. He lost his marriage and he lost half of his daily life with his child. Those are not small losses. Those are seismic, identity-level losses. The kind that do not just hurt. The kind that rearrange who you are from the inside out, that make you look in the mirror and wonder who is left. He is 1 week past the finalization of the divorce. 4 months past the day he found out. And he is doing everything by the book. He is sober, which matters more than it might sound, because grief is one of the most powerful triggers there is, and choosing not to numb it takes an act of will every single day. He is lifting weights. He is walking, which sounds small, but when you are in that kind of grief, when getting out of bed feels like climbing a mountain, getting outside and moving your body is genuinely heroic. He is talking to people, reaching out instead of going silent. He is on medication. He is calling crisis lines when he needs to. On paper, this man is doing the work. He is fighting for himself with everything he has got, checking every box that the mental health world tells us to check, and still the pain has not moved. And yet the feeling has not left. Not for a single second in 4 months. He describes it as something that has become a part of him, like it is no longer visiting, it has moved in and started paying rent, rearranging the furniture, settling into every corner of who he is. He says he is too weak for this much grief. And that line stopped me cold, because it is so deeply wrong and I want to address it directly. You are not too weak for this grief. You are too human for it. There is a difference. The grief he is carrying is not ordinary heartbreak. It is layered and complex in ways that most people outside of this experience will never fully understand. First, there is the betrayal itself, the discovery that the person you chose, the person you stood next to and made promises to and built a whole living, breathing life with, chose someone else while you were still in the room. Still present. Still trying. That alone is devastating in a way that language barely reaches. But then there is the particular cruelty of his situation, which is that his wife was not even consistently kind to him. He describes her as sometimes controlling and verbally abusive. Psychologically abusive toward the end. So he was not just betrayed by a loving partner. He was betrayed by someone who had already been chipping away at him, quietly eroding his confidence and his sense of self, and he had stayed anyway because the family they built together meant everything to him. Because the child they shared was his whole heart. Because leaving felt like failure and staying felt like love. That is the part that I keep coming back to. She was not treating him well. And he still loved the life. He still loved the unit. He still showed up every single day for that child and that home and that future they were supposed to share. He absorbed the criticism and the control and the moments that left marks, and he kept choosing to stay, kept choosing to try, because in his mind you do not walk away from a family just because it is hard. That kind of devotion, the kind that holds on even when things are hard, even when you are being mistreated, is not weakness. It is an extraordinary capacity for love. It is also, devastatingly, the kind of love that leaves the biggest hole when it is gone, because the hole is shaped not just like a wife or a marriage but like a whole version of your life that you protected and tended and believed in. What makes this situation particularly brutal is the cognitive dissonance he is living inside of. When someone treats you badly, there is a part of your brain that wants to use that as a lifeline. You think, okay, she was not great to me, so I can hold on to that. I can remind myself it was not perfect. I can use that knowledge to create some distance from the grief. But grief does not work that way. The heart does not mourn the relationship it wished it had been. It mourns the one that actually existed, the real moments, the good mornings and the inside jokes and the child who carries her face and his laugh, the life that felt like home even when it was painful. He does not miss a fantasy. He misses the real thing. The flawed, complicated, sometimes beautiful, sometimes damaging real thing. And that is so much harder to let go of, because you cannot dismiss it, cannot rewrite it, cannot tell yourself it was never worth having. He is called 988 multiple times. For anyone who does not know, that is the mental health and crisis lifeline, and calling it takes courage that most people will never have to summon. Picking up that phone and saying out loud, to a stranger, in the dark, that you are not okay, that you are struggling to stay, that you do not know how to get through the next hour, that is one of the hardest things a person can do. Especially a man who has spent his whole life being told that handling things quietly is the same as handling them well. He is reaching out. He is not disappearing into the darkness alone. He is fighting. But he also said something in his post that I cannot gloss over, and that is that he does not really want to live anymore. This is where I pause completely and speak directly. If you are feeling this way, please stay. I know that sounds simple and I know it is not. But the version of you that exists on the other side of this grief is someone you have not met yet, and I promise you that person is worth becoming. The pain you are in right now is real. It is not dramatic and it is not weakness and it is not something you can just decide your way out of. But it is not permanent. Even when every single second feels like proof that it is. Now I want to talk about the broader picture of what happened to him, because I do not think this story is just about one man's grief. It is about something that happens when people go through major life transitions and suddenly find themselves with access to new environments, new people, new definitions of what they want and what they deserve. His wife leveled up professionally, and somewhere in that process she started measuring her personal life by the same standards she encountered at work. She found men with status and income that matched her new world, and her husband, who had built his entire life around being present rather than powerful, around being devoted rather than impressive, suddenly did not fit the image she was building of herself and her future. That is a specific kind of betrayal. It is not just romantic. It is also a statement. It is her saying, without ever having to say it out loud, that what you gave was not the right currency. That showing up every day, being sober, being engaged, being the kind of father and partner who stays in the room, that none of that counted the way a salary figure would have. And for a man who gave everything he had, that message does not just sting. It cuts at something foundational. It attacks his sense of worth at the very root of it. And when you are already grieving, when you are already running on empty and holding yourself together with every last bit of discipline you have, that kind of wound does not just hurt. It convinces you of things that are not true. It whispers that she was right to leave. That you were never going to be enough. That the grief itself is evidence of your inadequacy rather than evidence of how deeply you loved. The thing is, high earning is not the same as high value. Presence is not nothing. Involvement is not nothing. Showing up for your child every single day, being the parent who is awake and attentive and genuinely there, being sober, being engaged, caring about the unit of the family you created together, those things are not consolation prizes for people who could not manage something better. They are the whole point. They are what children remember. They are what actually builds a life worth living. And any partner who could not see that was already looking through the wrong lens, measuring the wrong things, optimizing for the wrong life. He calls himself empty and hopeless. And I believe him. I believe that is exactly how it feels right now, standing 1 week out from a finalization that made permanent what he had been trying to survive for 4 months. I believe the emptiness is real and the hopelessness is real and the exhaustion of fighting so hard for so long and still feeling this way is real. But I also want to say something to him that I mean with everything I have. The fact that you still feel this much, after everything she put you through, after the control and the verbal abuse and the psychological damage and then the ultimate betrayal, the fact that you are still capable of this depth of grief means your capacity for love is fully intact. She did not break that. She tried, in ways both obvious and subtle, and she could not. That capacity is going to be the thing that saves you, eventually. It is the thing that makes you an extraordinary father right now, in the middle of all of this pain. It is the thing that will matter more than any of this, one day, when you are standing on the other side of it and you can finally breathe again. Right now, 1 week past finalization, 4 months past the day your life changed, you are in the worst of it. You are in the part where the wound is still open and the future feels like a wall with no door in it. But 1 week is not the end of the story. It is barely the beginning of the healing. Keep calling those lines. Keep lifting. Keep walking. Keep talking to people. Not because it stops the pain immediately, not because it makes the mornings easier or the nights shorter, but because it keeps you here. And being here is the most important thing you can do right now, for yourself and for that child who needs you to still be standing when they come back through the door. I said I was going to take a clear stance and I will. This woman did not just cheat. She traded a devoted, present, loving partner for status, and she walked away from a family while already being verbally and psychologically abusive to the man holding it together. She is not a victim of circumstance or of a marriage that simply ran its course. She made choices, repeatedly, over time, with full awareness of what she was doing to him and what she was dismantling. And the fact that he is the one drowning in grief while she apparently moved forward without much visible struggle says everything about the imbalance of what happened here, about who loved more and who lost more and who was actually paying attention to what they had. He is not too weak for this grief. He is carrying something that would level most people. And the fact that he is still standing, still sober, still showing up, still reaching out, is not weakness. It is the quietest, most uncelebrated form of strength there is. You are not the man she decided you were. You are the man you have been all along. And that man is worth fighting for. She gave birth to their son and within 1 hour he was already texting his mistress. Less than 1 hour after her son was born, her husband picked up his phone and sent pictures of that newborn baby to his mistress. Before her own family had even seen those pictures. Before the cord was barely cold. While she was still in a hospital bed recovering from giving birth. Let that land for a second. Our narrator had known for a while. She had found out about her husband's infidelity during her pregnancy and made a calculated, painful decision to stay quiet until the baby came. Not because she was in denial. Not because she forgave him. But because she was pregnant and she was protecting herself and her unborn child and she needed to get through one enormous thing before she could deal with another. That is not weakness. That is strategy. That is a woman who knew what was at stake and made a deliberate choice to control what she could in a situation that was spiraling out of her hands. She had probably lain awake at night running the math of it, weighing the cost of confrontation against the cost of silence, deciding over and over again that the baby came first. That kind of discipline, the discipline of sitting with something unbearable and choosing not to act on it yet, takes more emotional strength than most people will ever be asked to produce. She watched her husband be attentive in the hospital. Kind. Genuinely happy about the arrival of their son. She noticed him on his phone occasionally, but she gave him grace for it, because they were bored, because it was a long stay, because she was trying to be fair even in a situation where she had every reason not to be. She was being generous to a man who did not deserve it. And I think on some level she knew that. She was probably watching him laugh and hold the baby and play the role of overjoyed new father, and feeling something deeply complicated, something that sat between grief and fury and a strange, exhausted kind of love, because she had not stopped loving him just because he had betrayed her. That is the part people on the outside rarely understand. Hurt and love are not opposites. They coexist, and they do so loudly. But she was in a hospital bed having just given birth, and survival mode looks different than confrontation mode. When she got home, the instinct took over. She went through his phone. And what she found destroyed whatever thin thread of doubt she might have been holding on to, the possibility that maybe it had slowed down, maybe he had started pulling back, maybe the proximity of becoming a father had shifted something in him. None of that. What she found was messages about how desperately he wanted things to work with his mistress. She found that within less than an hour of her son being born, he had sent that woman pictures of the baby. She found messages about how much he missed her. How he could not wait to sleep with her again. She found that the first time he saw his mistress again after the birth, they had sex that same day. Every message she read was another room in a house she had not known existed, and she had to walk through all of them alone, on a phone screen, while her newborn slept nearby. Oh, absolutely not. Let me put this in terms that are impossible to misunderstand. This woman had just pushed a human being out of her body. She was sitting in a hospital bed, exhausted, healing, emotionally raw, holding her newborn son, still wearing a hospital gown, still hooked to monitoring equipment, still in the earliest and most fragile hours of new motherhood. And her husband, in that same building, at that same moment, was sharing that baby with the woman he was sleeping with. Not sharing as in sending a proud announcement to his wider circle. Sharing as in, look what just happened, look at this child that exists now, and here is where I want to be instead. He was emotionally narrating the birth of his son to his mistress before his own in-laws had received so much as a single photograph. He gave her that moment before he gave it to anyone who actually deserved it. She even found that he had called the mistress from the hospital cafeteria. He went to get breakfast, a completely mundane task, the kind of errand that takes 10 minutes, and he used that window to call her. While his wife was upstairs in a hospital bed with their newborn. He could not go 10 minutes without making contact. He could not get through one breakfast run on one of the most significant days of his life without reaching for his phone to connect with the other woman. Picture what that looks like. A man standing in a hospital cafeteria, maybe holding a coffee cup, maybe watching the elevator doors, speaking quietly into his phone to another woman while the mother of his child lay one floor above him, healing from labor, waiting for him to come back. That is not someone who is struggling with divided loyalties. That is someone who has already made a choice and is simply waiting for the right moment to make it official. There is a particular cruelty in the timeline of what she describes. She talks about feeling like in his mind he had been giving his time to her up until the birth, and then it was back to business as usual. And that is exactly what it sounds like. He showed up for the performance of fatherhood in the hospital. He played the role. He was attentive and kind and visibly happy. And the second the curtain came down, he picked up his phone. The birth of his child was an event he attended, not a moment that changed him. He treated it the way someone treats an obligation they have finally discharged, something they were present for so they could say they were there, and then moved on from without carrying it with them. That distinction matters enormously. This is the part that I think is easy to miss when you look at this story from the outside. He has love for her. She says so herself, and I believe she means it. He is not a cartoon villain. He is not someone who feels nothing. He probably does love her in whatever way he is capable of loving her. But love that coexists with this behavior is a compromised love. It is love that shares space with selfishness and cruelty and a total disregard for the person it claims to care about. It is the kind of love that wants credit for showing up to the hospital while simultaneously calling someone else from the cafeteria. It wants to be seen as a good husband and a good father without the inconvenience of actually being one. That kind of love is not enough. It never was and it never will be. She was pregnant through this. That means she carried his infidelity in her body alongside her child. She felt her son move for the first time while knowing what her husband was doing. She went to prenatal appointments, had those vulnerable, emotional, hormonal months, and she did it all while sitting on a secret that would have broken most people wide open. Every ultrasound. Every late-night craving and every swollen morning and every conversation about nursery colors and baby names, all of it happening on top of something she was not allowed to say out loud yet. She made a choice to protect her pregnancy and her mental state and her baby first, and she held that choice even when it cost her, and it clearly cost her a great deal. And she is still here. She is not broken. She says she has made the choice to leave when she is healed. Not immediately in the chaos. Not in a moment of rage. When she is healed. That is a woman who knows herself. That is someone who understands that leaving well matters as much as leaving. She has a newborn. She has her own recovery. She has logistics and legal realities and emotional bandwidth to manage. She is thinking clearly even in the middle of something that would make most people stop thinking entirely. But I want to say something about her framing that is important. She says she knows for a fact that her husband has love for her. And I understand why she says that. It is true, in a sense. But I want to gently push back on what love means in this context. Because a man who sends pictures of your newborn to his mistress less than an hour after you give birth is not demonstrating love. Whatever he feels for her, and maybe it is real, it is not organized around her well-being. It is not protective of her. It is not even pausing for one of the most significant moments of her life. Love without consideration is not the kind of love anyone should have to settle for. Her instinct to leave is right. Not because he is a monster, but because she deserves someone whose love is the kind that actually shows up for her. The kind that does not look for an exit the moment the hospital cafeteria offers a window. The kind that does not narrate the birth of its own child to someone else before the mother has even made a phone call to her family. She deserves someone for whom she is the first call, always, not the person being managed while someone else gets the real emotional investment. The fact that she is thinking about healing first, about timing this carefully, about doing this in a way that protects her and her son, tells you everything about who this woman is. She is not impulsive. She is not acting out of pain alone, even though she would be completely justified if she were. She is building something. She is laying groundwork. She is already, in the middle of her own devastation, thinking about what comes next and how to do it right. Most people in this much pain are just trying to get through the hour. She is thinking about the year. That is not something you can teach someone. That is just who she is. My verdict is this. He gambled on something that was never worth the bet, and he lost his family doing it. She gave him every possible opportunity to be present, to choose them, to show up for the most significant moment of both their lives. And he used that moment to send pictures of his son to another woman. That is not a mistake. That is a revelation of character. And she saw it clearly. The choice she has made is the right one, and it is brave in a way that is quiet and easy to underestimate. She had a baby, found out her husband was texting his mistress from the hospital, and instead of falling apart, she made a plan. That is not just surviving. That is someone who already knows what she is capable of. Her son is lucky to have her. So tell me in the comments which one hit harder, because both of these hit me somewhere deep. If this video got to you, leave a like and subscribe, it genuinely means a lot.